This podcast counts as socializing.
Okay, welcome back to This Podcast Counts as Socializing. I'm your host, Kayla, and all the way from Scotland, we were joined with Gabby.
Hello.
And all the way from Indianapolis, we were joined by Abby.
So exciting.
Gabby is stepping in this week for Nick, who is, I don't know, doing his job that I don't understand. And Abby is back from her midterm, which I do understand.
Nick is somewhere in the mines.
He yearns for the mines, just like a Victorian child. Check out episode 10, I think, for more on that. Happy International Women's Day. I forgot to mention that.
That was
before.
a good episode.
The mine or the Women's Day, because I've not made an episode of Women's Day.
Happy
Women's Day. Congrats, guys. We're such lovely women.
No, it actually does kind of relate to today's topic, because today's topic is just like how I love being a woman. And I really do. I love being all girly. And I just love being a girl.
Okay.
Okay, wait, I wanted to do all of my housekeeping up front this time. Okay, if you're listening on YouTube, you should subscribe, because we're one follower away from hitting double digits. You can be the 10th subscriber. You can be the 10th subscriber. And then also follow our Instagram if you want to see any of the visual aids today, and you're listening on a podcast app, then you'll be able to see the pictures that I'm talking about on our Instagram. That's at This Podcast. And then also send us an email at thispodcast@gmail.com if you have any constructive criticism, unconstructive criticism, compliments, ideas, need a place for your creative writing to be received. You can email it to me.
I emailed you a topic.
If we know you,
and if you had listened to our last episode, Gabby, you'd know that I know.
Oh, okay. I listen to every other one.
I know. So if you want a fake fan who only listens when Abby's here,
I sent an email. How is that a fake fan? I'm dedicated.
Or we'll call you
I
out.
just expect perfection from my audience, and I really don't feel like that's too much to ask. I'm sipping on a little tea today for our social hour. What are you guys indulging in today?
I'm drinking white wine because, in my defense, it is 7:30 at night in Scotland. So this is not.
Hey, baby, you can drink whatever you want.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, you guys are drinking nice, normal midday bevies, and I'm on an appropriately timed Savi B.
Hey, I wouldn't have been against the day drinking, but I did do some night drinking, so I'm good for right now.
I did night drinking last night and day drinking today and night drinking.
You okay?
There's rugby on. I've been watching it all day.
Yes, sports ball.
Transition into Savi.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then Abby, looks like you got a coffee, maybe?
I do. I'm covering the brand, but
Damn. Okay.
Yeah, they have to earn
well,
that
not
sponsorship.
They don't deserve to be.
Okay, I like the way you think.
So true, man.
Yeah, a chai, my classy chai.
Oh, I love a chai.
Okay.
Obsessed.
I think we should actually just jump right in, because I'm afraid I'm gonna have a lot to talk about today. I've been working on this for way too long. I was gonna read a whole book, but then I already had 20 pages of notes, so I only read a half book, and still a lot of that got cut. So let me go ahead and share my screen with you guys so that you can see what I'm referring to as we go. Can you guys see now? It should be white right now.
Screen.
Okay. I haven't hit anything. Okay. So today's topic is episode 12, the evolutionary biology of women, or as I would like to call it, our herstory.
Okay, Drag Race.
And I want to shout out my source for today because it was really good. I read the book. It's called A Brief History of the Female Body, an Evolutionary Look at How and Why the Female Form Came to Be. It's by Dina Emera. She is a PhD in evolutionary biology, and she has a main focus in the reproductive history of women. And it was a really fun read. So if you like this episode and you want to hear more about it, most of the information did not make it into this episode. So there's a lot more out there if you find this interesting.
Let us know if you find the female body interesting.
We are big fans of the female body.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
Female body, comment yay female body in the comments.
Hey, if you're big into women, drop a W in the chat. Okay. Oh my God, you know what I totally forgot I was gonna need? My notes. I was like looking at this first slide and I was like, I don't remember. Okay, give me 1 second.
I'm gonna
Make
plug
sure
in
I'm
my
on the right
charger
note.
while you're looking.
No, I have them pulled out. I just wanted to make sure they were my edited notes and not the huge note page, but it is the right one.
Okay. I
Okay.
love the diagrams.
I know, so helpful, right? I also was trying to pick pictures that were really simple, but I'll explain as I go if I think somebody's a little more complex. Okay.
Wait, hold on.
So
Where is she?
what? Oh, she's
I
just
was
getting
getting
her
my
charger.
charger.
If you say something really funny, I need you to like turn around and throw a dart and like make a bullseye.
Okay, hang on. I'll grab them so that I
Wait,
have
I'm gonna
them.
need props
A wall.
I'll have them ready for a zinger.
for a zinger that she does plan to have.
I get 3 zingers. That's my limit.
Okay. So before we can even really like talk about women, we're gonna have to talk a little bit about our chromosomes, specifically the X chromosome, which is gonna play a big role in us being women. So, in biological terms, sex is defined by whether an organism makes large sex cells, which we'll call eggs, or small sex cells, which we'll call sperm. And in human and most other mammals, biological sex is determined at the point of conception by which sex chromosomes are present in the father's sperm. This diagram that you're looking here at on the right is just showing the size comparison of the large sex cells versus the small sex cells. And there's a 2,000 times difference, is what it's saying there in the image. So the size is really the big determining factor over are you men or are you women in biological terms. With some rare exceptions, if the sperm cell contains an X chromosome, the organism will grow to develop large sex cells and then will be defined as female. And if the fertilizing sperm contains a Y chromosome, the organism will develop to produce small sex cells, and then we'll call those individuals males. Okay. And while we're on this topic, I'm just going to give us a few definitions that will help us throughout our conversation. So sex is just whether an organism is making eggs or an organism is making sperm, versus gender is the social identity that we as human beings have given to those categories. And then within that, we also have hermaphrodites, which is an organism that makes eggs or sperm in the same body at either the same point in their life or sequentially at different times in their life. So maybe they make sperm as a youth and eggs as an adult, in which case that organism is a hermaphrodite.
Don't seahorses do that?
No, seahorses, actually they might. I don't remember. I know the big one that we always talked about in school was the clownfish.
Yeah.
I don't remember if
Shout out
seahorses
Nemo.
Big Nemo.
Actually,
Nemo is a hermaphrodite. Representation matters. And then the last definition here is hermaphrodites should not be conflated with and are not the same thing as an intersex individual. This is also known as disorder of sexual development and difference of sexual development, and is just any kind of mismatch in anatomical, psychological, gonadal, and chromosomal sex. So that could be a lot of things. That's like a huge umbrella term. Just one example of that would be an individual that has XXY chromosomes, which is just a result of errors during meiosis, the splitting of the sex cells where they just gained an extra X. But it could be a lot of things. And brain images of individuals with extra sex chromosomes have shown that the number of X chromosomes actually do affect the size and shape of various brain regions. So it may have an effect on sexual identity in ways that we still don't understand. And I think that is very cool. That maybe our biology does in some way affect how the cultural ideas that we put on to those biological differences. But before we really even had the concept of sex chromosomes, organisms such as bacteria were reproducing asexually through mitosis. So I think I have a slide for this. I do. Mitosis is the process in which one cell divides into two cells. And this process involves duplicating all of the DNA that is in that cell and then splitting that information into two new cells that are genetically identical to the original cell. So you have a certain amount of DNA in one cell, you make twice as much of that DNA, and then that DNA halves itself, and now you have two cells that are exactly like the beginning cell. This the genetically identical cells can create problems because you then have low genetic diversity. So if your original cell has some kind of error in your genetic instructions of life, your two cells that you made are also going to then have those errors, right? So there's no like corrective process in this cell splitting. In that same vein, why can't I say genetic, dear fucking Lord?
Genetics.
I just am thinking of vagina.
Vagina. Herstory.
We're not
We're
even on the
getting there.
vagina section yet. I need to calm down.
I'm so excited for the vagina section.
Oh my God, it's so much of the vagina section did not make it in. I'm so sorry, guys. I did my best. A lot of it did. Don't worry. There's some fun stuff coming up.
Oh,
Hold your horses. Okay,
I'm so excited.
Genetic diversity can be really advantageous in a lot of ways, but generally speaking, it creates the opportunity for adaptations by allowing for differences in genetic patterns to either be more or less beneficial to the species. And this is kind of a big push for how evolution happens. If some kind of mutation is more advantageous, then it is more likely to be passed down to the next generation. And woohoo, we have a new adaptation over many, many thousands of generations. Okay. All of this being said, so many steps in between. Over a course of thousands of years, we eventually get to meiosis. Ding, ding, ding. New form of cell splitting has arrived on the scene. A new bombshell has entered the villa. And this is really cool for biology because now we have the means for sexual reproduction. So the difference here with meiosis versus mitosis is that we end up with genetically diverse cells. So instead of fully replicating all of the DNA, we're going to split the DNA in half into two different cells, and then we're going to take those two different cells and push them back together in some way, say maybe with an egg and a sperm. And something else that can occur since we are no longer just duplicating the DNA is we have this fun thing called recombination that happens with these chromosomes where they can also kind of share bits and pieces back and forth with each other. And in some ways, it's like you're scrambling up the instructions a little bit. You're rolling the dice to see maybe if we did a little bit differently, it might be better. So now we have meiosis. It's really cool. We have the means for sexual reproduction now. This was the link that we were missing. But even though we have meiosis, we have the means for sexual reproduction, we still don't have distinct male and female organisms. Instead, a lot of early sexual reproducers still had sex cells of the same size. And this change to differently sized sex cells is a really pivotal moment in evolution because it results in the distinct organism sexes that we know today. So let me see if this next image will be helpful. Yeah, not yet. Okay. we don't know enough yet to talk about that image, but I'll tell you, we'll get there. Okay. So often this evolution between the size of sex cells still led to hermaphrodites rather than like this binary male-female that we associate with modern mammals. So it's kind of like this link between. And this differentiation is going to happen many different times in many different ways across the tree of life. It's not like one linear path. Different organisms are going to have a different set of mutations that kind of lead them to this same conclusion that having different size sex cells is going to be more beneficial than if we have all of the same size sex cells. And the main idea behind that, like the prevailing theory for why we think this is beneficial, a lot of research has gone into thinking that this is a good hypothesis for this, is that large sex cells have this advantage that they can better provide for the offspring that they're trying to create. They've got more genetic information. and shit right there, ready to do its job, versus small sex cells can move a lot faster. We give them this machinery that helps them move a lot faster. And you can also make a lot more of them without putting a ton of energy into making those cells.
So do most like animals not have a female like big cell and a male small cell? Is it usually the biological like big cell small cell?
Most mammals have the big cell, small cell differentiation. We'll get into this a little bit. The animal kingdom is weird. And mammals are kind of like the most bland when it comes to like what we've figured out works, versus other areas of the tree and life have come up with some crazy ideas about how to get reproduction done. But just in thinking of like modern day mammals, we've seen through lots of different processes of evolution that there is something advantageous about the sex cells being different sizes because so many different species have come to that same conclusion on different paths.
That's actually so crazy. Like I've always like I know the difference between sexes and like in different species and stuff. Like I've studied that, but I've never considered the advantageousness of having a big cell and a small cell. Like why that would be the choice.
Yeah, and it's kind of something like as soon as you say it, it's like, oh yeah, that kind of makes sense. Like you want to have one where you can kind of like just jizz out a bunch of it and it not be important and like hope for the best. And then one that's just kind of like, we're putting all our effort into this one. Let's hope something gets there.
Yeah.
But it's like something I never really just like sat with and thought about.
Yeah, that's wild. Interesting.
Yeah, okay, so now we have our big cell and our small cell. And these are going to be the defining characteristics of having males and females, like I said before. But how are our chromosomes driving this sex difference? Interesting, our chromosomes actually don't do much in the first couple months of our embryonic life. They're kind of just sitting there waiting for their time to shine. Everyone begins with the same potential to either be male or female, meaning both gene programs are acting simultaneously in the gonads up to about the 6th week of your development. So we're kind of like all on the same path, and then week 6 hits, and you're like, you can either keep going with instructions A or instructions B, and you're going to have one trigger that tells you which set of instructions you're allowed to read. So in the 6th week, a gene located on your Y chromosome is turned on. This gene is known as the sex determination region Y, or the SRY gene. And it takes over all of the developmental processes in the gonads, leading to testy development, while also suppressing ovary development. And mammals are really unique in the animal kingdom with their sex determination, in that it's relatively simple and an uncreative design. Like I said,
you're
like
simple and uncreative.
like I said, there's some weird shit happening out in the animal kingdom, and mammals have kind of all decided on a somewhat similar like set of rules for how we're going to operate. This is a quote, and unless I say otherwise, so that I don't have to like say who the quote is by every time, if I just say quote, it's from my main source. If not, I'll specify who the quote is from. So quote, you find species that determine sex genetically but have no obvious sex chromosomes. You find species that decide sex by temperature or other environmental factors such as food or nest availability. You find species that have dispensed with males altogether. Females are reproducing by a strange type of parthenogenesis in which eggs can develop normally without being fertilized by sperm. And you find many hermaphroditic species. Comparatively, all mammals reproduce sexually, and the vast majority use the same X and Y chromosomes to decide sex. No mammalian species have evolved parthenogenesis, hermaphroditism, or any different sets of sex chromosomes. So it's summing up what I said before. All mammals have kind of decided on the same thing, even though there are basically an infinite number of ways we could have figured out sex determination or reproduction.
I remember learning in like ecology or something about like that one, there's like some type of fish or something that in like the lava pools in the ocean, if it's like a certain temperature, they develop male or something. Can you imagine if mammals did that? Like,
and it's
all
just like
men born in Florida, like everyone in Florida.
I know. I was
is
gonna say
a
like the
male.
whole equator is just like full of testosterone. Like and like and that makes sense. Like why we wouldn't do that because then we wouldn't be near people then that we
Yeah,
would have the ability
you'd
to
have to
reproduce
make
with.
a pilgrimage to the North Pole in order
Exactly.
to
Like it doesn't make
reproduce.
sense for our species because we don't like migrate for like reproduction. We
Yeah,
tend to like kind of
awful
stay in one
biologically,
location.
but that would be a really good book.
If you had to like migrate to find a sexual partner because all the men are at the equator.
Oh, the men would come to the North Pole.
Oh, for sure, for
Women
sure.
are not going
Wouldn't
to the
you
equator.
want to leave the North Pole though?
Wait, okay, men are at the North Pole and women are.
I think that makes way more sense. We're like partying in Miami. And then they show
Okay,
up and we're like,
write that down.
oh,
Write that down.
okay, copyright that. Okay. So where do we get our X and Y chromosomes is where I want to talk about now. Because we didn't really start off with these two different sets as being our sex determination. So X and Y chromosomes developed from just normal ass other chromosomes. At the beginning, they were identical in size and content. In the SRY gene, like our master on switch for men differentiating in the embryo, first evolved from a mutation on the X chromosome in a gene called SOX3. And there was some other like sex determining mechanism before the SRY gene, but we don't know what it is. Isn't that fun?
Will we
I
ever
love
know
it.
this?
I mean, never say never. So I'm sure someone much smarter than me has an idea of how to figure it out, but it probably takes a lot of money that the government's not going to give them.
Oh, sure.
No, I love when you're like reading about a subject and they'll just straight up be like, we don't know. Anyway, so yeah, there was something else that was doing sex determination before the SRY gene. It's unknown what it is, but we have this area of genes on the X chromosome called SOX3. There's some kind of mutation that happens, and what it was, I also don't think is necessarily known, but there's this mutation, and then so we have an X and Y. They hold the exact same things, and they are the exact same size. The X chromosome has this mutation, and then the Y chromosome begins to pick up male-specific genes. So things such as sperm production, they start to kind of like hitchhike onto this mutation onto the Y gene. So the male-specific genes, they start to accumulate near this master switch region, the SRY region, until the two chromosomes become so different that they're no longer able to pair up during recombination and like switch their genetic material around. So this is how we result in two distinctly different X and Y chromosomes because they're no longer having enough patterns to find each other and match up during meiosis. So what happens now is that the Y chromosome also begins to shrink over time because, also, side note, the X chromosome has thousands of genes. How many genes do you think are on the Y chromosome?
50.
Abby, you have a guess?
I remember it's like relatively small.
It's less than thousands.
Like 500.
I'll go 250.
Okay, those are good guesses. The author described it as being dozens of genes.
Okay, so I was right with 50.
Yeah, so dozens, it's a little bit of a broad term because I don't know, how many dozens?
Yeah.
Like 12,000 dozens? Could be still
That's
a
so
lot of
crazy.
genes. But I'm guessing like 24 maybe, I don't know. So why did the Y chromosome start to shrink a bit? Because it was the same size as the X chromosome, and then it started picking up more genes. So that's like not necessarily intuitive. You'd think you would get bigger. Basically what happens is you still have two X chromosomes. So even though it can't pair up with this Y, the X is still doing some level of recombination. But the Y now doesn't have a partner. So anytime there's some kind of maladaptive mutation happening, it's kind of just getting fucked up and breaking off and then no longer having a function. So like this recombination that happens is also really important to like repair damage within the chromosomes. So when you lose that, you're just damaging parts of the chromosome. And then if you have parts of this chromosome, these gene patterns that don't do anything, eventually over time, we're just going to not continue to make those parts of the
Are
chromosome.
you implying that the Y chromosome is like really fucked up and useless?
Oh, that is a really interesting thing that you've asked me. I don't know if I would say fucked up and useless, but I would say weaker and less superior. In fact, many mammals have lost parts of the Y chromosome at vastly different rates, some losing just small parts of it, and some species completely losing the Y chromosome altogether. Like, I have a picture for you. Our northern mole vol and our Japanese spiny rats have both independently, through different forms of evolution, fully lost their Y chromosome. They still have male and female gender, but their specific way of reproducing without a Y chromosome, I'm uncertain of. I did not deep dive that.
It's like the biggest cliffhanger.
I don't even know that they fully know. It's kind of like they're doing something.
What do you mean they lost the Y chromosome and then don't know how they reproduce? Northern mole. Well, I'm Googling this. Right.
Yeah, I mean, see if you can find it. I don't know if there really is a concrete answer or if there's just like a couple ideas floating around.
Yeah, that might be.
What did you say, Abby?
Y shrinkage just sounds derogatory. I don't know why. It's making
No, Y shrinkage sounds so derogatory, and I'm glad. I like what a good insult. I would like to look at a man and be like, yeah, you look like your Y chromosome shrunk.
Oh, it says, Google says they can reproduce without a Y chromosome because it has evolved to have a sex determination system where both males and females have only X chromosomes. So I guess when you say that, like,
answer, you see, to me, that's not an answer.
Yeah, it's not. It's definitely not an answer. But I guess when you say like we started out the same, and then it was the Y chromosome determining it, I guess they start out the same, and then there's some other.
Yeah, there must be like some kind of gene that gets turned on and off. That's just on the X chromosome.
Like it's just a selective.
What
gene
that gene is, though, might not be known.
Because I feel like almost it makes more sense to not have it like separated out on a whole separate chromosome. Like it would be better to have it on just the same.
Yeah, because then we see things like sex-linked disorders where having one less X becomes like a hindrance, because if that one X is fucked up, you don't have that.
I've been wanting to talk about calico cats this entire time. Please, for the love of God, tell me we're talking about them.
I have no notes on calico cats. But I'm sure we could talk about calico cats off the cuff.
You really picked a good topic for me. I have so many things I want to talk
Gabby,
about.
when Nick was like, I don't think I can record, I was like, that's fine. I think I know the perfect guess.
Please, for the love of God, we talk about calico cats.
We were literally like, I think Gabby would be a good get.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on calicos? Throw those at me, bitch.
Well, that just like really proves the fact that like, you know, like calico cats are the reason that like they're calico because their X-linked genes like provide the caliconess, and so that's just like
caliconess. The scientific term, it's caliconess.
Yeah. So it's just interesting because that's one like phenotypical example of how the Y chromosome or like having two X's like feeds into like how you look.
You have an extra just in case. I always think about that with color blindness. Like, and it's so funny to me, like how many men are colorblind.
A disproportionate amount of men who are colorblind.
No, I think there's just a lot of colorblind men.
Just disproportionately colorblind.
Like, yeah, men just like aren't strong enough to see color. Like
it's like not even more than a ratio of 1:4.
Like, like men just aren't strong enough for the color red. I'm sorry.
But, like, it's crazy.
Someone needs to say it.
If we had an understanding of genetics when like gender norms also were developing, because obviously gender norms were way above genetic understanding, obviously.
Yeah.
But like if we knew that like the Y chromosome, like, because if you've got two X chromosomes and you've got a genetic deficiency on one X chromosome, the other X chromosome takes over and like covers you essentially. So if you only have one X chromosome and that one's faulty, your Y chromosome can't take over. If we knew that when we were deciding gender norms in the medieval times, like, are you kidding? Women's rights would be 100 years in the future.
There's been this trend where this girl will like ask ChatGPT, she'd be like, what would society be like if men had periods or whatever? And it's so funny because they'll always subset it and be like religion, literature, government. And it's just like, it always gives the funniest answer.
Thing? Like, everyone was really cool with women's periods till the Catholic Church stepped in and
No,
was like,
don't get us started on the Catholic Church right now, Gabby.
I'm going to email you that topic. I would like to talk about periods until the Catholic Church jumped in.
Someone needs to write this down.
I'm drafting it as we speak.
Yeah, wait, because that's the other thing is, don't get me started on fucking King Henry being all fucking mad about not having a son, but also only jizzing out X chromosomes.
That was one of the things I wanted to talk about too. It's the male that decides it, and then they get mad when they had a female. Like, it's your fault, my guy. That's another thing. If we knew about genetics when we were deciding gender norms, it's the men's fault that they weren't getting
Let's be realistic, though. Let's be realistic. Men can't have, what's it called? Take accountability for their actions. It's still behead her.
Yeah, that's so true. You're so true. Hey, can I get a shout out of what the email is again?
Yeah, I would love to. It's thispodcounts@gmail.com.
This pod counts. All right, good. I'm emailing you right now.
So, Y shrinkage led many to wonder if humans would also eventually lose their Y chromosome completely. But it is now believed to be highly unlikely because most mammals have not lost their Y chromosome, and the presage of the Y shrinkage has slowed considerably in modern times, so we don't see the vast shrinkage of early mammalian life. So unlikely that we will lose the Y chromosome as humans, but only time will tell, really. Okay. Yeah, go ahead, Abby.
Like a theory for why, like, the it became more advantageous to like have like a split of two different things. Like, you know?
Yeah.
I can't remember exactly what you called it, but I mean, because like these northern moles are like really small, and so it probably doesn't, like, if this process that they do takes more energy, it would be easier to create a smaller thing using that, plus having the genetic advantages that it does in reproduction.
That is a really good thought, because a lot of like decisions.
Well, a lot of mammals have these like sexual dimorphisms. That,
yeah, like a lot of like changes in machinery are like determined by how can we expend the least amount of energy. Because if your whole life is about survival is finding ways to obtain energy and finding ways to lose less energy. So I think that is a great thought. And maybe the answer is already out there and I just don't know it. But now we have men and we have women. So I want to talk about one of the most defining and unique features of human women: titties, breasts, mammaries, honkers, bazongas, boobies, tatas, melons, jugs,
asking.
knockers, nature's stress ball, if you will.
I was wondering why you were asking.
I was like, I can't keep writing the word breast out over and over again. It's the worst one.
That is the most satisfying payoff to a question I've been wondering and not asking the answer for.
I was like, I cannot keep typing out breasts. I need some synonyms in my notes.
For reference, Kayla kept asking in our big group chat about synonyms for boobs and synonyms for, what was it, coming? Penises or something?
Don't spoil it.
Sorry. But
spoiler alert. So, mammals are distinguished from other types of animals by a few things: the presence of hair, sweat glands, a few skeletal differences, but mainly we have mammary glands. And in fact, Carl Linnaeus named the mammalian group based on the Latin word for breast, mamma. So it is our big defining feature of our taxonomy, is that we got mammary glands, breasticles, honkers. It's a big deal that we got them. And they're really cool. They helped us do a lot of cool shit. So the fact that mammals lactate is highly advantageous. It's a big evolutionary adaptation. Mammals can now have specialized food that would be impossible to obtain or ingest for infants. It also gave the mother flexibility on how and where they wanted to live and reproduce. Breast milk is also so cool. It is the most it's the perfect concoction recipe made by biology to feed a baby. It meets all of the needs of the young. It contains highly specific fats, carbs, and proteins. It also contains antibodies, antimicrobial factors, hormones, vitamins, minerals. It contains some bacterial cells that are important bacterial cells and maternal stem cells for the baby. So it does a lot of cool shit. And human females are unique compared to other mammals in that apart from slight swelling during nursing, typically breasts are not a visible trait of other species. But in humans, they're a defining characteristic. So why do human primates have such voluptuous yayas and no one else does? That is the real question we're looking at today. Why do we got them big old knockies?
That's where this is going. I'm so excited.
Because why do we? Not my cat. My cat don't got. I mean, he's a boy, so he wouldn't anyway. But he look at all those nipples, and he got no boobies. So that's what we're trying to figure out.
I've never wondered that. I'm so intrigued.
They do. Like when they breastfeed, they do like slow up a little bit because they're producing milk, but it's still not the fatty knockers that we know today. So. Okay. So prenatal breast development is the same for both males and females. After 1 month of embryo development, two parallel ridges form on the belly side, and these are called milk lines. Along the milk lines, mammary buds sprout in the embryo, and these are going to be the foundation for our yiddies. It is established during prenatal development with some fat cells and rudimentary glands that have the potential to make milk, but there will not be breast development until puberty. And fun fact, did you know 5% of babies will produce milk? This is called witch's milk from 17th century folklore that claims that witches would steal the milk for magical potions.
God.
I definitely thought you were going to say the babies that produce milk were thought to be witches and would be thrown into a fire.
No, that would be so much sadder. And sadly, I do feel like that probably happened at one point.
That seems like logical.
At least one baby that happened to, if 5% of all babies are producing milk. But
I'm sure.
It doesn't last for long. Once all their maternal hormones pass from the baby, they will stop milk production. Because something that's important to consider is when you're growing a baby, you also have the placenta, which is the placenta did not make it into this episode, but could probably have an episode all of its own because it is one of the coolest human organs. And
can we have an episode on that, and then can I be the guest and then have Ross be my guest because he literally studies that for his PhD.
Yes, we can have a placenta episode. The girl in the book too, it was so fun when we read that part because she was like, the placenta is my favorite organ. She talked about it. And it was so fun.
Ross comes home from work and like tells me like all this shit about the placenta and like all this stuff he does in surgery. I'm like, that is crazy.
But it is crazy because the placenta allows for the fetus and the mother to be sharing a blood supply, but the fetus and the mother are not genetically identical. And typically when you have a foreign body that in your bloodstream that's not genetically identical, it is targeted by your immune response because your immune response is looking for things that are not genetically identical to you. So it's interesting that we're able to have this connection of blood flow but also support. That's also a whole nother episode.
That's the placenta episode. I'm sending another email.
Placenta. Yeah, but this is why the baby might have some of those maternal hormones. They're sharing a blood supply, and the mom's got a lot of hormones going on trying to make a whole human. But they'll pass through the baby shortly, and they will no longer be making milk. Okay, but so we laid the foundation for our boobies in these small babies, but they do not have boobies until puberty hits, because knocker development is largely driven by hormone released from the ovaries. So there are 3 hormones that prompt ovary maturation. Oh God, let me do my best to pronounce this one. Gonadotropin releasing hormone, which if I say again, I will call GnRH, is produced in the hypothalamus and tells the pituitary gland to make and release the other 2 hormones that are the star of our show, the follicle stimulating hormone, FSH, and the luteinizing hormone, LH.
I was thinking of LH.
Oh my God, girl, you knew LH was coming up.
Well, I did take a hormone in psychology class.
And LH does
I remember
a lot of work. Yeah, these are really important. So it's not fully understood how the brain knows when to start making these hormones to activate the ovaries, but it's largely believed to be driven by factors such as genetics, weight, general health of the person, and their skeletal growth. And we do know that this is a feedback loop between the brain and the ovaries' hormone production. So the brain nudges the ovaries to make estrogen by releasing FSH and LH, but the brain is also sensing how much estrogen is in the body and then releasing FSH and LH in response to those estrogen levels. And the ovaries will be fully mature by around age 15 to 17, but okay, that's cool. What does this have to do with those big mommy milkies? I'll tell you. The glandular cells that produce milk in the branches of ducts are lying dormant in the Tiddy region from birth, waiting for activation. So at puberty, new branches are going to start to form in response to the estrogen that is released from the ovaries, and the glandular cells are going to start to proliferate a lot to form these branches.
Looking at your diagram, I've already answered a question I was going to ask, where, like, why do your boobs get bigger when you're pregnant? And I see it's because the mammary glands bloom, which is a very
bloom
verb. I don't like thinking about that.
Blooming mammary is a band name.
That is so true. Yeah. Uncomfortable.
The metaphor she used in the book was that it was like a tree with all these branches, and that they would grow different flowers.
It's cool in poetry, but that's fucking creepy when it's my own boobs.
I don't want my boobs growing
after
flowers. Yeah, so they're so the glandular cells are proliferating, and they now have the ability to produce milk, but they won't produce milk until there's an additional hormone signal that results from pregnancy. So after your boob development, you got the machinery you need to make the milky. You just don't have the signal from your body telling you that that is a necessary thing to do.
I wonder if there's like a genetic disease that tells you to produce milk when you're not pregnant, you know? Like just like an error in your coding.
I could see there being, and then like some kind of hormonal, I don't know, I think it's like prolactin or something like that is the hormone. Yeah. Or I don't know. There's probably a lot of hormones involved. It sounds like milk. I'm sure there's I'm sure there's probably so many hormones involved, but I could see there being like some kind of genetic
that would just
thing where you're making more of that hormone.
Yeah, a pathway that could go wrong, but that's just what I'm not heard about.
And like men lactate sometimes for strange reasons.
Yeah, have you heard about the experiment? I have no idea if this is actually true, if this is just conjecture you hear in science class, but like that one, like where if a baby is like a crying baby is in like a village of men, like men will start lactating after 30 days or something, being around a crying baby.
Just released a paper looking at like the neurotransmitter responses that happen when a baby cries that lead to milk production. So I could see a world in which that would also happen to men because
so
they
it's like
have all this same equipment.
Yeah, they've got this stagnant glands and they just
Mhm.
never receive the stimulus that activates
Yeah.
them to proliferate.
And
So
like
like
I've
I guess
also
it would
seen
make
like
sense.
same-sex couples where they like both identify as female and like one will like birth the baby, like do like the pregnancy part, and then another will nurse the baby, and she will like take like a certain hormone regimen leading up to the birth of the baby to be able to lactate to feed the baby.
That's
I
so
think that's
cool.
really cool.
And
And I
science
also think
is
it's a
so
cool way for
fucking
both
cool.
women to like be involved in like
Yeah.
the like physical production of the child.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Actually, that's so dope. Especially when knowing about like when a baby's sick, its saliva, when in contact with the mom's nipple, changes the
Mhm.
content of the breast milk to better suit the baby's health.
Okay.
That's like witchcraft. Like,
Witch's milk.
Get burn the witch.
Okay.
Insane.
So the matrix around the ducts, which is the space between all of our branches that we have made, also start to accumulate fat in response to estrogen. The amount of fat in this matrix is what determines boob size. So small titties and big titties all have the right equipment and the same amount of equipment to produce milk. They just have different levels of fat between all of that equipment. And although the main signal to lay down fat in this region is estrogen, it is not necessarily that big booby havers produce more estrogen than small booby havers, but rather that the fat producing cells are more or less sensitive to the estrogen response. But that still leads us to like why build that fat there? No other animal does that. They just build like
That's
the
what I was gonna
machinery
ask.
and then
But like,
either
doesn't fat aren't like women have more fat deposits in order to keep their ovaries and their uterus safe? So like, wouldn't it be more beneficial to have more fat near your mammary
That is an
glands?
interesting theory that did not come up because there is a theory that's like, okay, maybe like the extra fat is like an extra energy reserve for like feeding the baby. But the problem with that theory is like mothers do build up like extra fat during pregnancy, but it's typically in different regions. And then the fat that is used is not from like the breast area, like it's coming from other fat stores. But I didn't think about maybe like the fat as like protection for like around like the chest, maybe.
Yeah, like that's why if you talk about like women's bodies, a lot of the people like women talk about like they have like the lower pouch, but that's literally to protect your ovaries and your uterus, and then also a fat storage because when you're starving, the first things to shut down are your reproductive organs.
Yeah.
So like it's nice to have the extra fat storage near there, but I guess if it doesn't draw from the mammary glands, it could be just for protection. But
exactly, no, the protection theory didn't come up.
Energy and protection.
No, this is a great conversation because now we are going to get into the theories of like we are there are so many species of mammals, and we are the only ones that have been like we should put some fat in between all these cells.
Are we smarter than every other mammal?
Well, that's the thing is it's also like, okay, if this was like super evolutionary, like a super good evolutionary advantage, like the way the placenta is, you would see it in more mammals. Like other mammals would supposedly maybe come to this same conclusion, even if it was through a different path of getting there. Oh my God, Gabby, the dart throw, did you make it?
I got a 4.
Nice.
You know what? You didn't hit the wall.
That's so true.
Okay. So Charles Darwin himself was really perplexed by the breasticles, thinking that it was inconceivable. You know Darwin was perplexed by titties. He looked at those, he goes, mad perplexed right now, mad perplexed. He said that the complex network of mammary glands could not have evolved for milk production by the numerous successive and slight modifications needed for evolution. He was basically like, this is so complex and such a good design for delivering nutrients to a baby. How did evolution make this happen? Like, he came up with evolution and still thought it was like crazy that we got to this decision. So before we get to like why fat, we're gonna go why lactate, because it's also how do we get to there? Because we didn't always do that. So today, many experts agree that breasts initially evolved for some other function other than feeding baby, and then eventually got to the feeding baby result. Olav Otifdel, a Smithsonian scientist, explains hunker evolution in this way. He says, starting over 350 million years ago with four-legged animals, amphibian-like creatures had simple skin glands that secreted a fluid to make their skin moist and free from infection. This like class of pre-mammals is called amniotes. This class first evolved, and this includes modern-day mammals, reptiles, and birds. And they had the amniotic egg, which contains an extra membrane. This was important for this amniotic egg because it allowed for amniotes to live and reproduce away from the water. So this allowed us to get out of the water and onto land for our reproduction. And Oftendale suggested that an African-like sweat gland was the precursor to the modern-day mammary gland. Said sweat and oil glands secreted substances that lubricated and waterproofed the skin and the eggs of these pre-mammalian ancestors. And those secretes may have also contained some kind of antibacterial component to keep the skin and eggs infection-free, and could have also served as some kind of thermoregulator. So he was like, we got these eggs, we moved them out of the water, and we're going to secrete weird skin oils to protect our eggs. Okay. That's cool. Thank you, Olaf. But how did we get from oily sweat to milk? Well, one of the primary jobs of this amniotic egg was to also nourish the developing baby. We're not building the baby in our body and feeding it with our placentas. We're shitting it out of our cochlea hole and needing to nourish it.
Pregnancy.
Okay, side note, this also didn't make it into the notes. Guess what they call, like when two birds have a cochlea and they mate, guess what they call that interaction?
Cochleatitis.
What's a good guess? They call it a cochlea kiss.
Yeah.
Gross.
I wish my cochlea could kiss your cochlea.
Want to come over and cochlea kiss? Kiss. Birds be like. Oh my gosh. Okay. Okay. So the eggs need to nourish our baby. Cool. That's important. So, for example, chicken eggs, most of the nutrients are in the really large yolk. And one of the most important proteins is the vitellogenin. It's driving the production of the yolk. But however, modern day mammals have mostly lost the genes that produce this type of protein, and this animal could probably have its own episode. What animal do you still think has one of these functioning genes? Yes! It's always the fucking platypus. Everything I learned about the platypus, this bitch is a freak. It does everything so fucking weird. Okay, that's the only mammal that still has one of these genes. Oh yeah, platypus could be its own episode. I could talk for hours about the platypus. But so we don't have these genes that make this like thick old yolk to nourish a baby. So therefore, these pre-mammalian ancestors needed to find some other way to nourish their young through like a very intense developmental period. And additionally, the mammalian ancestors also started laying smaller warm-blooded eggs. So they also had much smaller yolks that didn't have as much nutrition to support a developing warm-blooded animal. So a new protein class drops. Bomb sound effect. Now we've got Cassians. A new bombshell enters the villa. It's thought that Cassians evolved to solve this problem and help nourish our eggs. So Cassians are a class of proteins that are only found in mammals, and they are derived from an ancient family of proteins that help in calcium regulation of the bones. And it also gives milk its classic milky white color. Cassians were secreted from sweat glands and are thought to have been able to pass through the permeable eggshell and then carry nutrition like calcium into the embryo inside of the egg. Okay. And then the hatchlings would have also been able to benefit from the same secretion. So now this oily sweat is filled with a very important protein that can seep into the egg and help develop our embryo inside. And then the infant can also feed off of that oily sweat. It is thought that then through a bunch of other steps that I won't go into, that eventually then we develop nipples. Ding, ding. Nipples come to play because it would have been a safer way to get this secretion to the baby. A pool of weird casein-filled oil on your mom is probably going to be full of bacteria and be somewhat harmful to the baby. So let's give a nice hole to
wait,
deliver
you're
that.
telling me this shit was just coming out of their pores?
Yeah, like they were secreting.
Dog, this entire time I thought you were talking about it was coming from like an udder or like some like weird archaic.
They're a type of gland that is like similar to a sweat gland. So they're basically like sweating milk.
And
they're secreting milk. And
then can we call it bone syrup?
They're secreting bone juice. And then
I missed this part in ecology. What the fuck?
A bunch of other shit happens in between for evolution to be like, hey, secreting bone juice kind of whack. What if we put a little knob for the bone juice to come out of instead?
This is when big milk started forming.
Yeah. And you could see how like maybe a big oily pool of milk on a mom's stomach in a warm summer day is not going to be the safest.
Disagree. That's my ideal situation.
We don't got Sir Pasteur over here yet. So, yeah, so then nipples come to the scene. Okay, awesome. So we know why we got boobies. We know how they figured out how to squirt milk out of these milk cannons. But we still haven't answered the question at the end of all of this, why do women got those big old bitties? Why do they got those gargantuan gazongas? Okay, so there are a couple of yitty theories. I'm going to list them out for you, and then we'll talk about them. Okay, here we go. Evolved to look like butts, which encouraged human males to pursue forward-face sex with their partner.
How would that be beneficial? What's the benefit of missionary versus doggy?
Butt theory. Evolved as an energy reserve to tap into during nursing. Evolved to give babies something to cling on to. Evolved to advertise genetic quality to potential mates. And lastly, evolved simply because boys like boobies.
Fucking men.
Evolved because men. Okay, so we'll start with the butt theory. And I feel like this is obvious. Pretty ridiculous theory. There's not much backing this one up. There's no evidence that big butts developed before big titties. So we would kind of need to establish that before we could really have any other conversation.
Well, that also might be, it probably developed because it is around, like, your sexual reproductive organs.
Your big booty?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's, but we don't... Because men be caked up, too.
Men be caked up. But there's no evidence that the butt before the boob.
Yeah, the butt is to help you stand upright and support.
Yeah, you gotta have those big glutes.
Posture. Yeah, so really,
then,
that's
women's hip size developed specifically so that they could give birth to like a baby with a skull.
Yeah,
exactly. So there's
butt and your like hip size has nothing to do with like fucking.
So you're hitting the next one here is that there's no evidence that butts were an encouraging sexual factor for ancient males. So okay. There's also no evidence that front-facing sexual reproduction is advantageous.
Especially when, like, back when the primates were just fucking to reproduce.
Especially, have you seen our episode, All Animals Do It Doggy?
I have!
Where I found out not all animals do it doggy.
Especially, they're not gonna know what position is beneficial, you know? Like, they're
No,
gonna do
here
whatever's
the
easiest.
idea behind the forward-facing sex is that it was thought that maybe it would encourage pair bonding between individuals, which I talked about a little bit before, where pair bonding is like where animals form like monogamous pairs and also share the burden of like rearing the child, which doesn't always, like, not all species do that. And it can be beneficial because you are um like, the idea of being like a fit species is, can you spread your genes the most? So if you have an established monogamous partner in your breeding, I know for sure that this is my genes being spread. So there is some idea that like monogamy is advantageous in that way. And then you also get like the dual child rearing, like, and that can also, is thought to be maybe advantageous. So it was like, okay, maybe if there's
partners.
yeah, so it's like maybe if they're forward facing sex, you build a stronger pair bond, and then that pair bond is the advantageous thing. But there is no like evidence that this front facing sex contributes to like more pair bonding and then is therefore an advantageous trait. So the butt theory is out of here. Butt theory,
Stupid bad.
stupid butt theory. Okay, we talked about this one a little bit. Stupid. Talked about this theory a little bit already, the energy reserve theory. So it's a good thought, but no other mammals have come to this same solution. So it's not likely that fatty breasts is necessarily like that important to solve an energy consumption issue related to like rearing a child. Like if it was giving us that much extra like fat reserves, you would think that of all of these thousands of mammalian species, at least one other one would have also been like, hey, that's a good idea, and come to the same conclusion. So that's one reason that it's like, okay, maybe that's not the most important. And then also we talked about before, fat is stored in other parts of the body more frequently while pregnant and nursing, and it's largely not accumulated in not your breasts get bigger, but because of the milk, not because of the fat accumulation. You don't build up more fat when you're pregnant. And then you're also using fat source from other location. Like you don't often hear women talk about like, oh, I lost so much boob fat when I was breastfeeding, you know? So that theory is also doesn't have much weight to it. The clinging theory, I just wrote, ouch. I feel I've never personally breastfed, but from the author of this book and from what I've heard other people say, you don't want your child clinging to your boobs if you can help it. There are other more efficient ways of holding the child to the nipple. So this theory is also not the best. The last two have like probably the most legs, but one will still be better than the other. The next we'll talk about is the female quality theory. So that
Wait,
this
I've
theory,
got a question.
yeah, go back.
Do monkeys or like gorillas, apes breastfeed?
They do. Gorillas breastfeeding is really cute.
Oh.
There was, oh my god, I saw this video once too where I don't know if it was a gorilla or some other kind of primate, but she was having a hard time like learning to breastfeed her baby. So they brought in a zoo staff member that was breastfeeding at the time to show her with her baby, like how to breastfeed. Yeah, and then the mom figuring out how to latch the baby and feed it. It was so cool. They brought the mom in. She like showed like her breastfeed the baby, and then they gave the gorilla her baby, and then it was so cool.
So are these theories like all mammals or are these humans?
This is all for humans. I would assume some of it, well, because humans are the only ones with these big boobies.
Yeah, but like I'm thinking of like apes and gorillas. They've got small, like their nipples look similar. They've got like a.
I mean, do we need to look up photos of breastfeeding gorillas?
I'm based on memory here, but like I'm pretty sure they don't have big
no, they don't swell up huge. They do swell a little bit, but it's not the same as like female breasts, or I mean human female breasts.
The latching thing.
From pictures I've seen, they just hold the baby. I mean, they also do have more hair around them, which was what part of this theory was. Like, as we lost hair, it was like a different way for the baby to cling to the chest. But it's like a baby clinging to your titty is like you're not. No one that breastfeeds now.
Imagine a baby clinging to titty hair.
And it doesn't make sense with like modern women. Like no woman that breastfeeds now is just like hanging her baby off her boob, letting the baby like cling on for dear life. So yeah, theory doesn't have a lot of legs. Just doesn't make a lot of sense. I think this just came up. It was like, well, other animals have like a lot of hair in the region, and then we lost that hair. So maybe this fat was compensating for that.
Okay.
But in my opinion, I don't think it's like a leading theory. So second to last is the theory of it showing some kind of quality of mate selection. The theory goes that women with higher hormone levels are going to be more fertile, and therefore they'll have bigger boobs, and large breasts are therefore become a preference in males. So then we evolved to continue fattening up our breasts. One study of only 120 Polish women found that there were no correlation between breast size and circulating estrogen, which we talked about before. It's likely not a difference in the amount of estrogen you're making, rather it is a difference in your cell's response to the estrogen. There's also no evidence that the slight differences in estrogen levels between large and small boobed women affect fertility in any way. And in general, there is no correlation found between large boobs and like rate of conception. Like you don't see like a big boobed woman and you're like, damn, she's got 50 kids. And something that the author points out in her book is like, if it were that easy that we could just look at a girl like cup size and know her like odds of making a baby, like we wouldn't have all these fertility specialists running all of these tests all the time. It wouldn't be this big complex thing. We could just look and be like, oh, you got a triple D, you should be good. Like it's not that straightforward. So with all of this being said, I hate to break it to you, the best theory for why women got those knockers is that men really like titties.
No.
Boys like the extra fat that we put in the matrix. So it became cemented in evolution. And arbitrary taste does drive evolutionary traits that have no other function other than pleasing their sexual partner. This has been nicknamed the taste for beauty and is a subset of sexual selection. Sexual selection is a form of natural selection in which individuals of a species compete for mates, leading to the evolution of traits that enhance their reproduction success. So Darwin concluded that the evolutionary back and forth between preferences for beautiful traits over time led to highly elaborate and stunning, unique traits observed today in the animal kingdom. And I've got some pictures of these crazy traits that are just there for aesthetic purposes. We mostly see this in birds. It's like the easiest, like it's counterintuitive to have like big, flashy things because you're an easier prey target. But if the female birds think this is really pretty and they're going to mate with you, then you do it. So,
well, and also if you're able to be that noticeable and still survive, it's a really good survivability trait.
Exactly. So, for most other, like, at least in birds, it also does show like some kind of like physical fitness in the animal kingdom, and therefore
I've got a Darwin theory. You might be going this way or not touching on this at all. I don't know.
I'm near the end, so I might not be.
So I feel like, because going back to what we were saying earlier, like we have no idea about like the genetic truthness of our predisposition and beliefs and shit. So like what we do have concrete proof of is if you have wider hips, you're more likely to survive childbirth because less complications. And I feel like, as a general truth, women who have wider hips have bigger boobs because you've got the curvy, aspect of it. I feel like those typically, in general, go hand in hand. So would it be true to say that like men associate like hips associated with childbirth with bigger boobs, which is why they have the preference for it, which is how the connection developed. So it is
the only thing I would say,
like genetically linked.
The only thing I would say is like, we don't know for sure that there's like a correlation between like hip size and like boob size. It might just
Well,
be
yeah,
that
for
like
sure. That's just
yeah. I
absolutely
don't
going
know if
off of
anyone's
my
like
like
tested that
stereotypes
before.
and that kind
Exactly.
of
That
shit.
might just be like our like what's the word? Our like prototype of like this like shape that
Yeah.
we see.
Or
Um
or if you just like subconsciously think, oh, big hips means big boobs good, you know, like like caveman brain. But like I feel like there could be a correlation there that men make where it's like this is
maybe.
good,
I mean, these
therefore
are
this
all
is
just
good.
theories. So it
Yeah.
really could be any of them. I mean, Gabby, it sounds like you're putting your weight behind the big butt theory.
Well, I'm just saying you said that men decide this, so I'm trying to verify
It
why
is
men
likely
want big
some
boobs.
it is likely some kind of sexual selection, whether that
Yeah.
is just like men found it aesthetically pleasing and then therefore they was like more likely for that meat
I mean,
selection to
I also
happen.
agree, boobs, you know, like in there, you know, but
um
like
but yeah,
genetically that
maybe
has
it wasn't necessarily aesthetics, maybe it was some kind of other sexual selection
yeah,
pressure, but it still leads to the same idea that like um we by our own choices and like cultural views can push evolution by just what
yeah,
our preferences are. Um, so to me and many biologists, the prevailing and most likely theory for why women got big old titties is that men just preferred fatty breast and therefore chose mates with fattier breast, cementing it as a trait related to reproductive success. Um, yeah, and that's just what it is.
I stand by my theory. I think my theory is
I
correct.
like your theory.
I
Hey,
outweigh
you should
Mendenhall and
You
Darwin
should
and all those bitches.
email. I mean, I'm sure our PhD would love to hear your thoughts. I'm sure she could give you a much better answer than me.
I've
Oh, we
already
got,
sent this pod counts 2 emails during
we got. You
this
know what?
recording.
We gotta get her on the placenta episode. No, that would be. I would.
That's gonna
It
be
would
a
be
hell of
like
an episode.
that would just be me reciting her book back to her.
Yeah, she's like,
She'd be
I
like, you
know.
should be like, I'm aware.
Actually getting these facts wrong.
I actually literally wrote the book on the subject. Uh, Okay, so this is a little bit of like a tangent, but kind of on topic. But it just found it interesting, so I wanted to share. So while we're talking about mate selection, UT Austin animal behaviorist and mate choice expert Michael Ryan, uh, he subsetted animal beauty into 3 types of traits: visual, auditory, and olfactory. Olfactory signals are an effective way to communicate in the dark and over long periods of time, and they can also convey information about potential mates or potential rivals. And they can give information about social rank and readiness to mate. For example, stallions sense when a female is ovulating by sniffing her urine. Uh, yeah, big Nick move over here. Um,
Passion strays.
and I'm sure you've heard of her. I'm name dropping a big name right now. The major histone compatibility complex, the MHC, is a group of genes that play a role in vertebrate immunity. And these genes code for the production of proteins that identify potentially dangerous invaders in the body. And they are also the most variable genes in vertebrae. So what I really want to talk about is how this is related to mate selection and species that raise young communally. Studies have shown that kin recognition is mediated by MHC-based odors, meaning they seek out those that smell more similarly to them. So like if we're all raising the youth communally, I'm more likely to raise the youth that smell like genes similar to my genes because I want my genes to be the most spread out genes. Um, Conversely, when choosing a mate to reproduce, they will seek out those that smell differently to them to make more healthy offspring with greater genetic diversity of MHC genes and to avoid inbreeding. One study
You
had women.
subconsciously know what inbreeding is?
I don't think they don't have like the cultural idea of like, you don't fuck my brother, but the idea is like because this isn't like a conscious awareness. They're not going around sniffing and be like, smells like good genes. But the idea is like maybe there's some kind of like olfactory response that's like giving you like in some kind of endorphins to be like, I really want to mate with this individual. And it also so happens that this individual has greater genetic diversity for my offspring.
Yeah.
For example, one study had women smell t-shirts worn by men and rated their preferences. The results showed that they would prefer the scent of men with the most different MHC genes to themselves. However, women taking birth control at the time showed the opposite effect, preferring men with more similar MHC genes to themselves. And globally, couples that have more similar MHC genes have higher rates of miscarriages, suggesting that this may have evolved as some sort of screening mechanisms in mothers to discard embryos of poorer quality and put their energy into embryos of higher quality.
That's actually fucking crazy.
Isn't it crazy? Genes are so crazy. And lastly on this subject, women also have an increased sensitivity to smell when they're ovulating. And the theory is maybe this is to detect the MHC genes.
I'm
make
scared.
you pick. Yeah. Dude, I read that and I was like, just another reason for me not to be on birth control. What if I accidentally inbreed?
So,
dude, yeah, go ahead, Abby.
I will say, with the t-shirt study, so I took the course I was talking about earlier, there's a pheromones lecture. And don't panic, there's literally no evidence that we have the ability to detect pheromones.
Yes, but that's why I kind of like this framing of it being around this complex genes that produce proteins related to immunology, because it's not necessarily like this chemical signal from a specific pheromone, but some kind of something that we yet don't know, detection of a gene pattern through like an olfactory sense.
Right.
Because you're right, we don't have like any pheromone response.
Yeah, no, and also like when it comes to like those sniff studies and everything, like pheromones and scent are not the same thing.
No.
Pheromones give off 0 scent. We also do not, like you said, do not contain. We have a very, very like teeny tiny gland that could be evolved from the pheromone gland in other mammals, but our olfactory nerve is not related. Yeah,
like as interesting as the study is that it's found like this correlation, it doesn't go the next step of being like why would we be able to like, you can't smell a gene, so like what is it there that's like leading to this correlation? Or was it just like, did it just happen like accidentally that they saw this correlation? Like, and then you could also get into like, okay, what kind of like statistical tests did they use to get this correlation? Like, if they ran a different statistical test, would it have been like insignificant? That's like really getting into the weeds of like how science is conducted. But regardless, I think it's interesting to think about. Yeah, and maybe there is like some kind of link there of something that we don't know about yet that we are able to detect. But I think we should move on to our last topic. Sex, baby. Coming, jizzing, finishing, ejaculating, orgasming, nutting, splooging, if you will.
They are.
I remember you jokingly being like, we should invite my former boss, your current boss, and I was writing this section, and I was like, you don't want that.
I told my coworkers that I was like doing a little podcast this weekend, and they were like, oh my god, you should send it. I was like, maybe, depending on the topic. I am not sending.
You should. It's not gonna get like actually super scandalous. It's gonna be very like above board. But it was kind of funny when I was like looking up like pictures. reading the page. It's like O's for orgasm. Okay, so a biological explanation for the female orgasm has plagued philosophers, anthropologists, and biologists for centuries. Female orgasms rarely occur during vaginal sex, are not required for reproduction, and the intense and repetitive physiological response seems too complicated to have simply evolved for no reason. So why do women come? Because it's pretty straightforward. Like we understand why men evolved to jizz because they needed to like dispense sperm to an egg somehow. Women don't need to come in order to like make a baby. So it's like, why do they? They don't have to. So let's discuss the first idea that it was just a biological accident, a byproduct of the male organism. So to begin, we must first understand a little bit of our shared anatomy with males and females. Um, the clitoris in females and the penis in males start to form in the same place from the same tissues. There are obviously some differences in the fully formed structures. The penis is a large external organ with the urethra enclosed inside versus the clitoris, which is much smaller and doesn't enclose the urethra. The head of the penis is fully enclosed in the foreskin, whereas the head of the clitoris is only partially covered by the clitoral hood. So they do have some differentiation that happens down the line, but they start from the same undifferentiated group of tissues. So they have some shared history. But before we get more onto that, I would like to discuss some clistery.
Oh, there it is.
American textbooks of the 19th and 20th century either ignored the clitoris completely, such as the first editions of Gray's Anatomy that did not mention the clitoris, or inaccurately described it as a small cylindrical structure mainly composed of the glans clitoris. In the late 90s and early 2000s, the publication of work by urologist Helen O'Connell was the first time that the anatomy of the clitoris became more widely recognized. She performed micro dissections on cadavers and MRIs on living women and published a paper in 2005 revealing the first detailed anatomy. She described the glans clitoris as the tip of an iceberg with over 90% of the clitoris tucked away in the pelvis. And the adult clitoris measures 5 inches long, expanding dramatically during sexual arousal. She also notes that there's no anatomical evidence of a G-spot in the vaginal wall itself, and that it is likely the internal parts of the clitoris that are stimulated through the vaginal wall during intercourse. I want to show you a little artwork. This is called the glitterous. It's called the glitterous. The glitterous. It's by.
She's wearing boxing gloves.
Oh my God, she's serving cunt.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's only one way to say it. This is the glitterous, made by Ali Wolf in 2007. It is a 100:1 scale model of the clitoris, bedecked in gold and sequins. She said, quote, "Almost no one I know talks about this incredible organ, how far it extends beyond what you can see on the surface and how it works. It's the most fabulous body part in the whole known world and universe, the only one that serves no purpose other than pleasure, and it's being ignored by Western culture for so many centuries. So I wanted to make something that celebrated it, a giant golden sparkling shrine that would help people come to love it like I do. No matter what your gender or desire, I hope this helps people connect to their own and each other's pleasure better. The glitterous is just a small part in a revolutionary shift of awareness."
The glitterous.
Yes, go glitterous.
Honestly, looking at this like structure, like the 3D model of it, you can easily see how it like just like becomes a penis and balls, you know? Like
it looks like the head of a penis and a ball sack.
Yeah, that's insane how it's literally the same structure, just in different ways.
Mm-hmm.
Men came from the X chromosome, so penis
and balls.
Penis looks like a clitoris. Yeah, the head of a penis and a ball sack looks like a clitoris. Yeah, let's reframe our mindset here.
You're so right, actually.
Yeah, she's beautiful and she's so big and she deserves to be talked about. She's more than what Gray's Anatomy wrote her to be in the early 19th century. So, like I said before, there's no disagreement over why males orgasm, since ejaculation is tied to sperm release. It has evolved as a means of sperm delivery. So therefore, it's thought that women simply orgasm because they are derived from the same tissues and men acquire them later in life. Like they still have all the same machinery that would have gone into being a penis instead. Therefore, it still has like all those same instructions to do the same things. It's just not making sperm just shoot out of itself. Okay. So talk a little bit about orgasms. They are a highly complex physiological response. The input received by nerve endings in the clitoris and the motor output is the involuntary contractions of the pelvic region. Dopamine, serotonin, and endorphins are released in the brain leading up to and during orgasm, and hormones such as prolactin, oxytocin, and again, luteinizing hormone are released during orgasm. The orgasmic reflex lasts longer than other reflexes, such as maybe you've heard the knee-jerk reaction is a classic reflex, with an orgasmic reaction lasting up to a few minutes. There are also 4 distinct phases of orgasm: excitement, plateau, orgasm, and resolution. During the excitement stage, stimulation of sensory nerves in the clitoris cause an involuntary increase of blood flow to the genital region. Plateau is a sustained and heightened level of excitement. If and when a certain threshold is reached, the orgasm stage will occur. This involves up to a minute of involuntary contractions. The contractions start to push blood out of the pooled region in the genital tissue during the excitement phase. During the resolution phase, the tissues are depleted of blood and return to their pre-excitement phase. For women, they can go immediately back from the resolution phase to the plateau stage, whereas men have a refractory period where they are unable to re-enter the excitement phase for a variable amount of time.
Why do you think that is?
They can't hang.
They can't hang, Gabby. It's really that simple. Like,
I know, but like biologically, what?
Women
like,
are going back to back running laps, and men got to sit on the bench after they complete a lap. I don't know what else you want me to say. I don't know, Gabby. I researched women.
Shrinkage.
It is their wide shrinkage, and I just don't.
So fair. So fair.
Gabby, I only read the book on women. I don't need the book on men.
Sorry.
So,
never mind. I won't ask any questions.
Yeah, I don't know why. I actually think I probably had to know why at some point. I feel like I learned this in school. That information escapes me now. I don't need to know.
Me too. I agree.
What is I think interesting about it is like someone's yelling at my hallway. What I do think is like interesting is that the like refractory period could be like really variable in men. Like for some men it's like only a few minutes, and for other men it could be like many hours, like to a whole day, and that usually like increases as they get older. But that's as much information as I know. So as I mentioned previously, many scientists believe there's a lot of weight in the theory that the female orgasm is merely a byproduct of the male orgasm. That is, females have orgasms because of the shared development and strong selective pressure of them in males. However, to many biologists at the time of this theory, and still today, the idea that a trait this complex exists by accident is outrageous, and has also been viewed by some as anti-feminist by tethering the female sexual response to that of a male, thinking it denies the importance and uniqueness of female sexuality and pleasure. So, okay, what are the other theories then? Let's take a look at the female orgasm as some kind of adaptive response. One theory is that they evolved by natural selection to, again, promote pair bonds, which we talked about a little before. Pair bonds involve monogamous mating and shared child rearing responsibilities. And this theory hinges on 2 assumptions. One, that pair bonds evolved in human ancestors as an adaptation. And 2, the female orgasm strengthens this pair bond. The idea is that if a woman achieves an orgasm during sexual intercourse, it's more likely that they'll want to have sex with the same partner again and will be more motivated to care for the offspring of a bonded partner.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Stay with me here because it's gonna be roundabout. But okay.
No, talk while I fill my water.
Okay. But we'll think about it this way. If it's very easy for the male to pass on their offspring, right? But females are less able to sexually reproduce in such a quick way because we got to carry a child for a whole 9 months. So women have to be more selective with who they want to keep as their pets. Whereas men don't have to be, well, let's not take this into cultural terms or what's been developing, but women do have to be more selective because they have more of a risk with what they carry.
Yeah, they have like a higher energy input and cost into one child versus like a men's buy-in to the child per se.
Have a better bond with, and if that is what creates the bonding with the release of oxytocin and everything like that, that's probably
it does make like a little bit of sense, right? And like the idea that like a woman is gonna want to have sex again with like somebody that they have good sex with, like that makes sense,
right?
Like it's just whether or not that is like evolutionarily adaptive enough to like form this complex trait. You are hinting on something though that's going to come up in the next theory, so put a pin in that thought. I think we'll circle back to it. So I do think like there's like some weight in this theory, though it's been discredited because there's no proof to suggest that pair bonds are necessarily adaptive. And many animals that do form pair bonds, including humans, often will mate with individuals outside of the bond. So like monogamy, if it was like really that adaptive, like you would think there'd be less people straying outside of monogamy, and that there would be like less of that stray also in the animal
don't
kingdom.
Think about that too much.
Yeah. Which is not to say that it's like not beneficial. But there hasn't been like a plethora of proof to say that it's adaptive. Another theory with a name I hate is the upsuck theory. So this is the theory that the orgasmic contractions help to upsuck sperm and increase the chances of fertilization. Upsuck would also give females control, allegedly, over whose sperm ultimately fertilizes her egg.
You want to get me pregnant? You better make me come, bitch.
Literally, I was like, I don't really see how that works. Cause like, imagine just being like, I'm not coming out of protest.
Can you imagine if you had to come to get pregnant? Like the upsuck theory was the truth.
Then we would definitely be having some population issues.
Yeah, well, that would definitely change like the hierarchy. You know, like it wouldn't be men deciding the babies.
The sex toy industry, though, would really be blossoming.
Oh, you're so true, Queen.
Okay, so maybe they get more control over who fertilizes their eggs, right? Okay. So in 2005, philosopher of science Elizabeth Lloyd publishes her book, The Case of the Female Orgasm, and notes a few problems with this theory and the other. She basically like tears apart all these theories and this one, and it goes off with it. First, a high percentage of women never orgasm during vaginal sex. And even those that do orgasm during vaginal sex don't orgasm during vaginal sex every time. And the female orgasm in itself is highly variable. So the variability alone weakens the argument that orgasm enhances a woman's reproductive success. Additionally, there's been no evidence that an orgasm affects fertility. And studies that specifically tested for upsuck of fluid during an orgasm have found no upsuck effect.
Damn, imagine being a part of the control group.
Dude, dude, I was thinking that too. And I think there were parts of the book that were talking about like some specific studies. And like I sent you this one, Abby, where it was like they were basically like stimulating the clitorises of like apes. And I was like, imagine being the tech of that, lad. He was like, gotta go to the animal facilities for a second and rub a clit. I'll be right back. Like,
I gotta work late. I have to make 5 apes come today.
Yeah, I have to.
That with dolphins, and then one chick fell in love with the dolphin, and then.
Girl, we can't talk about dolphins on this podcast.
That wasn't for a
so mad.
That was for a mental connection.
Yeah, and that was for her own pleasure.
You know that? Yeah, well, an episode for a later time.
I feel like I could see Nick doing that episode.
Yeah. I've already sent too many emails. I can't send a dolphin.
My God, I'm gonna be like so excited that we have so many This Pod Counts emails, and then I'm gonna be disappointed when I realize they're all from someone that has my phone number.
More fun to send an email.
It is. It feels like we're writing each other letters. That being said, everyone listening, feel free to send me an email. So Lloyd writes that blind faith in adaptationism. That is the conviction that all biologically important traits must have some direct product of natural selection, has driven people in the field to extreme measures and unsustained hypotheses, hypotheses.
Open snakes.
Lloyd throws her support to the byproduct theory, arguing that it's the only one that accounts so far, the only one so far that's not based on one flawed assumptions and most accurately describes the trait of orgasms as they're experienced by women today. Additionally, in regards to the anti-feminism criticism, Lloyd counters that a byproduct theory does not dictate our cultural views of the trait, and that a trait can be culturally important without necessarily being an adaptation. There's basically like our cultural understanding of traits and our scientific understanding of traits do not have to be one and the same. Something can have a scientific meaning that doesn't. Yeah.
Bring that out when like there's a little bit better bias against women.
She wrote this in 2005, okay? But she's basically like, science does not necessarily like, if this is the answer, we can't be like, this isn't the answer because I'm a feminist. Like, that's just what the answer is. We can give it like a more feminist name. Like, it doesn't need to be the byproduct theory. Like Abby said, the clitoris isn't the byproduct; it is the starting point in some ways. So, but that's a different conversation. So, in conclusion, women embody resilience, adaptation, and survival, biologically, socially, and historically. Through an evolutionary lens, we see that every aspect of female biology is not just a product of nature, but a testament to strength, endurance, and ingenuity. Women have shaped evolution, driving the survival of our species through caregiving, and leadership. And while science continues to unravel mysteries like why humans evolved permanent breasts or the true function of the orgasm, one thing is clear: evolution doesn't always make sense. It isn't always straightforward. Sometimes it's survival, sometimes it's chance, and sometimes it's just that men like boobies.
W women.
Hey, if you're a feminist and you like boobies, make sure to like and subscribe.
Even if you're not a feminist, what are you doing listening?
All right. Well, how'd you guys feel about that topic?
I loved it. That was great. I love boobies.
I love boobies too. There's so much I didn't talk about. Even like back to the thing that I just felt like we didn't have time to dive into with the orgasms is like a lot of times like traits can have had different purposes in the past that they still don't do today. So like a lot of some of the theories were like that orgasms used to be used to have a direct purpose that we no longer need them for. And one of the examples was like when fish reproduce, they kind of like spray out all of their eggs into the ocean, and then the man sprays out all his jizz. So they were like, this like spraying pattern of the eggs is like really similar to like the same contractions that we see in orgasms. So I didn't get into all of those theories because I was afraid we'd run out of time. But like I said, there's a lot of information on this subject, and we came up with a lot of topics for the future that I think are exciting.
I've sent 3 emails.
I know. I'm excited to read all your emails. I better be
invited back for one of them.
It sounds like you have to be on the placenta episode because we need our guest expert here.
Yeah, I'll get resident expert Ross in on that. No worries.
Oh, all right. That was fun. Do you guys have any final thoughts on these topics? Any take-home points for our audience?
Do you have another dart left, Gabby?
What?
Do you have another dart left?
Oh yeah, I've got one more dart. Oh, Kayla, okay. You were looking down while I shot the last one. I got a 20.
Okay, don't shoot it yet. Don't shoot it yet. Okay. Wait. Should you shoot it and then I play the outro music, or should I play the outro music and then you shoot it?
After she makes it.
Yeah, after I get this bullseye. We hit this dart.
All right. Everyone prepare. Yeah.
But you have to have you come up with a good tagline before you do it? Something about women.
Fuck bitches, get money. That was a bullseye.
Actually,
counts.
It's a lie.
socializing. This podcast counts.